Hello, I'm David Heslop. I'm the Tyneway County archaeologist, and I'm going to be talking about querns. Now, the earliest humans crushed cereal grain using a large flat base stone and a hand-sized grinder, and it wasn't until about 300 BC that a completely new type of quern, the rotary quern, was invented by communities that were becoming familiar with wheel-thrown pottery and the turning of a wheel on a wagon or a chariot axle. The introduction of rotary querns, like this typical example from Yorkshire, enabled farming communities up and down the country to process wheat and barley much more efficiently. And from this time on, we see a rise in the population, with many more settlements being built across the landscape and the surrounding woodland cleared. By the time the Romans conquered northern England, the countryside was largely cleared of forestry. And as every farming settlement had a number of querns, these artefacts are one of the most common finds on sites of this period. Now, the stones have a round shape, and they're known as beehive querns because they look like old-fashioned straw beehives. In use, there would have been a bottom stone or base stone with a central spindle around which the top stone would rotate. The top has a depression called a hopper into which the cereal grain was poured, and it fell down a hole which was drilled right down through the middle, flowing onto the grinding surface between the top and the bottom stones. The top was turned using either one or two handles. These fitted into sockets which had been drilled into the upper sides. The handles were made either of wood or of iron, and it's easy to see which was used on a particular stone, because if the handle was made of wood, it would have worn away before the stone socket, leaving a perfectly cylindrical socket like this one. But on the stones with iron handles, slots wore into the stone as the metal is harder than the surrounding sandstone. As we can see on this example, the fact that it is worn more on one side than the other shows that it was turned backwards and forwards through half a turn rather than being rotated right round through 360 degrees. The bottom stones were often sloped to one side, which emphasised this uneven wear. But it meant that the flour of the ground cereal grains would naturally fall to one side of the stone, where it could be collected in a cloth or basket rather than spilling around the quern on all sides. Poor quality stones tend to polish with use, and the grinding surface needed to be roughened with a metal hammer. The very best sandstones come from the Pennines and are called millstone grits because they're durable and they retain an abrasive surface with use. Modern experiments have shown the beehive quern could mill about 4 kilograms of flour an hour, which is over 4 times as much as a flat quern and grinder. And because the weight of the rotary quern exerts a downward force on the grinding surface, helping to crush the grain open, whereas the crushing action for the saddle quern has to be provided by the user, the rotary quern takes much less effort and so can be used for longer without tiring the user. The development of the rotary quern has been regarded as one of the most significant inventions of early history. In Britain, beehive querns were in use for about 4 centuries before they were gradually replaced by disc querns, which were introduced by the Romans. The Roman army used lava querns, manufactured in huge numbers in quarries in Germany and France, and supplied to the army right across the Northern Empire. The stones were abrasive, like millstone grit, but were riddled with voids made by gases escaping through the molten lava and being held in bubbles as the lava cooled. This makes it less than half the density of sandstone. That's very important, as the Roman soldiers had to carry the querns with them when they were marching on campaign. Because they're thinner and lighter than the beehive querns, they have a tendency to break, like this example that we see here. And they break as a result of being worn through. Now, this example was used by the Germanic auxiliary troops stationed at Newcastle Fort, Pons Aelius, in the 2nd century AD. Each barrack of 10 soldiers would have its own quern for milling the daily ration of corn. Now, the shape of the military lava quern was soon copied in local sandstones by the native population. This example is from the civilian settlement outside the gates of the fort at Newcastle, and is made of a rock type from a quarry somewhere in the Tyne Valley. Not the best type of stone, but perfectly functional for milling a family's daily needs. So often disregarded among the more exotic finds from archaeological excavations, querns are now being recognised as a crucial component of the daily subsistence economy. They were traded over hundreds of kilometres and became symbols of family life, perhaps being given as dowries to newly married couples establishing new family groups. And they were used in ritual ceremonies to encourage the fertility of the land of the farming communities of the late Iron Age and the Romano-British period.